She sat alone at the wedding until a billionaire stranger whispered and hugged her, "Act like you're mine tonight." A timeless love story with passion and depth. Don't miss a moment, my beautiful family, because this one is written from the deepest part of my heart just for you. Hi, my beautiful family. I am your brother, Mr. Peter. May the Almighty, the keeper of love, hold you tenderly tonight and forever. May every woman here walk with grace, dignity, and a heart too strong to be broken. May every man be clothed with wisdom to guide with gentleness, courage to protect with honor, and humility to serve with love. May every child laugh without fear, dream without limits, and may our elders be wrapped in peace, respect, and long, joyful days. May sorrow turn into melody, trials into triumph, and every silent night into a sunrise filled with hope. Amen. My family, you are the reason my pen moves, the heartbeat in every word, the soul in every chapter. When you watch until the end, you keep this bond alive. You give meaning to my love, and you make this family stronger than ever. To all the new members joining us, this is your home now. Don't leave, stay, feel the warmth, and you will see this channel is not just stories, it is your family. If your heart is true, write, present. If your love is real, write, I am with Mr. Peter. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin in the darkest moments, when hope seems as distant as stars in a cloudy sky, and destiny arrives wearing a stranger's smile. Hesley Rivera sat alone at table 12, her sapphire dress shimmering under the fairy lights like tears she refused to shed. The wedding reception swirled around her in a kaleidoscope of laughter and clinking glasses, but she felt invisible, wrapped in the suffocating silence of her own heartbreak. 3 days ago, she had discovered Bryce Coleman, the man she'd planned to marry, tangled in bed sheets with her roommate. His cruel words still echoed in her mind like poison. "You'll never find a man who'll truly love you, Hesley. You're too ordinary, too demanding. No one will ever choose you first." The bride, her dearest friend Tamika Washington, glowed with joy across the dance floor, lost in her new husband's arms. Hesley forced a smile whenever Tamika glanced her way, determined not to let her personal devastation shadow this perfect day. But inside, she felt as fragile as glass, one sympathetic look away from shattering completely. She traced the rim of her untouched champagne glass, watching the golden bubbles rise and burst like tiny dreams meeting reality. Other guests had begun to notice the beautiful woman sitting alone, their whispers floating across the reception like unwelcome ghosts. "Poor thing," she heard someone murmur. "Tamika said her boyfriend left her for her roommate." The words stung deeper than any physical wound. But what Hesley didn't know was that across the room, a pair of warm brown eyes had been watching her for the past 20 minutes, and their owner was about to change her life forever. Across the elegant ballroom of the Detroit Marriott, Jesse Owens adjusted his charcoal suit jacket and surveyed the celebration with tired eyes. At 38, he had attended countless weddings, always the successful bachelor friend who brought expensive gifts and polite conversation. Tonight, however, felt different. His business partner, Camden Hayes, had dragged him here after months of hermit-like behavior following his explosive breakup with Peyton Mills. "You need to remember how to be around people again," Camden had insisted. Jesse's gaze swept across the room and stopped abruptly when it landed on her. The woman in sapphire sat with perfect posture, despite the sadness that seemed to emanate from her like heat from a flame. Her dark skin glowed luminous under the soft lighting, and her natural hair was swept into an elegant updo that revealed the graceful curve of her neck. But it wasn't her beauty that captivated him, it was the quiet dignity with which she bore her obvious pain. He watched as other guests glanced her way with pity, and something protective stirred in his chest, surprising him with its intensity. Jesse had built a multi-billion-dollar company by making calculated decisions, felt his feet moving toward her before his brain could analyze the impulse. "Excuse me," he said, approaching her table with 2 fresh glasses of champagne. His voice was warm honey over gravel, distinctly masculine yet gentle. "I'm Jesse, and I'm about to ask you a huge favor." Hesley looked up, startled. Warm brown eyes met hers, and she felt her breath catch. The man standing before her was devastatingly handsome in an understated way. Tall and lean, with sandy brown hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it, strong jawline softened by kind eyes, and an easy smile that seemed genuinely concerned rather than predatory. "I know this sounds crazy," Jesse continued, settling into the chair beside her without invitation. "But my ex-fiancé just walked in with my former business partner who tried to steal my company 2 years ago. They're headed this way, and honestly, I could use someone to help me save face." He leaned closer, his cologne a subtle blend of cedar and something uniquely him. "Would you mind acting like you're mine tonight? Just until they move along." The request was so unexpected, so different from the pity she'd been receiving all evening, that Hesley felt the first genuine spark of interest she'd experienced in days. "You want me to pretend to be your date?" "More than that," Jesse said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I want you to help me show them that I've moved on to someone absolutely extraordinary." Before Hesley could respond, Jesse stood and extended his hand. "Dance with me?" The opening notes of At Last by Etta James filled the air, and despite every rational thought screaming at her to decline, Hesley found herself placing her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers with surprising warmth, and he led her onto the dance floor with confident grace. Jesse's hand settled at the small of her back, sending unexpected shivers through her body. He moved with natural rhythm, guiding her effortlessly around the floor as if they'd been dancing together for years. "So what's your story?" he murmured against her ear. "Why is someone as beautiful as you sitting alone at a wedding?" "Same reason you're asking strangers to pretend to be your girlfriend," Hesley replied with unexpected sass. "Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest." Jesse pulled back to study her face, seeing the pain she tried to hide behind humor. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "Whatever happened, I'm sorry." The sincerity in his voice nearly undid her carefully constructed composure. When was the last time someone had looked at her like she mattered? When had anyone ever apologized for pain they hadn't caused? As the song continued, other dancers seemed to fade away. Jesse spun her gracefully, and when she came back into his arms, they were closer than before. His thumb traced small circles on her back, and she found herself studying the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "You know," Jesse said as the song drew to a close, "this started as an act, but I'm not sure I'm pretending anymore." Hesley's heart hammered against her ribs. "Jesse!" "One more dance?" he asked as My Girl began to play. "I promise no more favors. Just one more dance, because I can't bear the thought of letting you go back to sitting alone." As Jesse twirled her under the twinkling lights, Hesley felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the intoxicating possibility that maybe, just maybe, she was worth choosing after all. But could she trust this feeling, or was she simply falling for another beautiful lie? Chapter 2. Coffee and Soul Connections. The most dangerous conversations are the ones that happen in the quiet hours after midnight, when defenses crumble. Like sugar in rain, and hearts reveal secrets they've kept locked away for years. Jesse couldn't let the night end. As the wedding reception wound down and guests began filtering out into the cool Detroit evening, he found himself unwilling to say goodbye to the woman who had transformed his rescue mission into something that felt remarkably like destiny. "There's a little place down by the riverfront that makes the best coffee in the city," he said, helping Hesley with her wrap. "Would you be interested in continuing this conversation somewhere quieter?" Hesley hesitated, her grandmother's warnings about strange men echoing in her mind. But something about Jesse felt different, safe in a way that had nothing to do with his obvious wealth or status. Maybe it was how he'd looked at her during their dances, not with the hungry desperation she'd grown accustomed to from men, but with genuine curiosity and respect. "I should probably go home," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Should probably," Jessie repeated with a smile that made her stomach flutter. "But do you want to?" The honesty of the question surprised her. When had anyone cared what she actually wanted rather than what she should do? "Yes," she admitted, "I want to." River's Edge Cafe sat tucked between renovated warehouses, its large windows offering a perfect view of the Detroit River. At 1 in the morning, they were the only customers, and the young barista seemed more interested in his philosophy textbook than their presence. Jessie ordered them both coffee and claimed a corner table by the windows, where city lights danced on the dark water like scattered diamonds. "So," Hesley said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug, "what's the real story? Why did you need rescuing from your ex-fiancé?" Jesse leaned back in his chair, studying her face in the soft cafe lighting. She looked different now, more relaxed, her guard slightly lowered. The vulnerability he'd sensed at the wedding was still there, but so was a spark of curiosity that made her eyes shine. "Peyton Mills," he said simply. "We were engaged for 8 months. I thought she loved me, but it turns out she loved the idea of being married to a billionaire more than she loved the man." "How did you find out?" "She told me." Jesse's laugh held no humor. 2 weeks before our wedding, she sat me down and explained that she'd been seeing my business partner Marcus behind my back. Apparently, they'd fallen in love, but she was willing to marry me anyway because I could provide better financial security. Hesley winced. She actually said that. Word for word, she seemed genuinely confused when I called off the engagement, like she was doing me a favor by being honest about using me. Jesse shook his head. The kicker was, she kept the ring and sold it, used the money for her honeymoon with Marcus. "I'm sorry," Hesley said softly. "That's incredibly cruel." "What about you?" Jesse asked, deflecting attention from his pain. "What's the story with the man who was foolish enough to let you go?" Hesley stared into her coffee cup as if it held answers to questions she'd stopped asking. "Bryce Coleman. We dated for 2 years, lived together for 6 months. I thought we were building something real together." She took a shaky breath. "3 days ago, I came home early from school. I teach 2nd grade and found him in bed with my roommate Chelsea." Jesse felt his jaw clench with protective anger. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing at first. I was so shocked I just stood there like an idiot. But then he jumped up and started explaining how it wasn't what it looked like, how Chelsea had seduced him, how sorry he was." Hesley's voice grew stronger, tinged with anger. "So I packed my things and left. That's when he showed his true colors." "What did he say?" "That I was fooling myself if I thought any man would ever really choose me, that I was too ordinary, too demanding, too—" She struggled with the words. "Too much work for what I had to offer." Jesse felt something dangerous rise in his chest. "He said that to you?" "Among other things." Hesley managed a bitter smile. "Apparently I was holding him back from finding someone more exciting, more adventurous, someone who didn't expect commitment and faithfulness." "Hesley." Jessie reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "That man is an idiot." She looked up, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "You don't know me." "I know enough." I know you're beautiful, inside and out. I know you're kind. You agreed to help a stranger without asking what was in it for you. I know you're strong. You're sitting here having coffee with me instead of hiding at home feeling sorry for yourself. I know you have grace under pressure and a smile that could stop traffic. His thumb traced over her knuckles. Any man who can't see your worth doesn't deserve you. Hesley felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time someone had spoken to her like this? You're just being nice. I'm being honest. There's a difference. They talked until dawn painted the sky soft pink over the Detroit skyline. Jesse told her about building his tech company from nothing, about the loneliness of success when you had no one to share it with. When he tried to impress her by ordering in French, he confidently told the barista, Je voudrais une salle de bain avec crème supplémentaire, s'il vous plaît. The teenage barista blinked in confusion before Hesley burst into laughter. You just ordered a bathroom with extra cream, she gasped between giggles. Jesse's face turned red as he realized his mistake, but Hesley's genuine laughter made the embarrassment worthwhile. I was trying to say coffee with extra cream, he admitted sheepishly. Well, you definitely made an impression, Hesley said, wiping tears from her eyes. Hesley shared her dreams of writing children's books, her love for her students, her close relationship with her grandmother who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Your grandmother sounds amazing, Jesse said as they finally prepared to leave. She is. She always says that the right person will love you not despite your flaws, but because of them. That real love sees the broken pieces and thinks they make a beautiful mosaic. Hesley smiled. I used to believe that. Used to? And it's hard to maintain that kind of faith when everyone who's supposed to love you keeps proving it wrong. Jessie walked her to her car in the parking lot, neither wanting the night to end. The morning air was crisp with the promise of autumn, and the first commuters were beginning to make their way into the city. Hesley, Jessie said as they reached her small Honda Civic, I know this might sound crazy, but I'd like to see you again. Not for pretense, not for any favor, just because I haven't felt this connected to someone in, well, ever. She turned to face him, searching his eyes for any sign of deception. All she saw was honesty and hope, tinged with a vulnerability that made her chest tighten. I'd like that too. Tomorrow? He asked eagerly, then caught himself. I mean, today, later today, Sunday. Hesley laughed, and the sound was like music, in the morning stillness. What did you have in mind? Jessie grinned, and she noticed for the first time how boyish he looked when he was truly happy. Leave that to me, I'll pick you up at 10. As Hesley drove home through the quiet Detroit streets, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in days, she felt something other than heartbreak filling her chest. It was dangerous, this feeling, of hope, but as the sun rose higher in the sky, she decided that maybe dangerous was exactly what she needed. But neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been following them since they left the cafe, or the woman inside taking photos through tinted windows. Chapter 3. Sunday Morning Magic and First Passionate Kiss. There are mornings that arrive like gentle whispers, carrying the promise of magic in their soft light. And Sunday mornings, spent with the right person, can heal wounds you didn't even know were bleeding. Jesse stood outside Hesley's apartment building at exactly 10 o'clock, his arms full of fresh flowers and a bag of groceries, his heart hammering like a teenager on his first date. He'd barely slept after leaving her, his mind replaying every word of their conversation, every laugh, every moment their eyes had met across that small cafe table. He'd built a multi-billion-dollar company, negotiated deals that would intimidate seasoned businessmen, but the prospect of spending a quiet Sunday morning with Hesley Rivera terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. When she opened the door, Jesse felt his breath catch in his throat. Gone was the elegant wedding guest from the night before. Instead, Hesley wore a simple sundress in soft yellow that made her skin glow, her natural hair loose around her shoulders in beautiful coils. She was breathtaking in her casualness, real and warm and perfectly imperfect. "You brought flowers," she said, surprised and pleased. "Sunflowers," Jesse replied, suddenly feeling foolish. "I know most people bring roses, but sunflowers always seem more honest to me. They follow the light instead of trying to be something they're not." Hesley felt her heart skip. How did he know exactly the right thing to say? "They're beautiful. Come in." Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with books and plants and photographs of students and family. Jesse noticed immediately how it felt like a home rather than just a place to live. Sunshine streamed through large windows, highlighting the warm colors she'd chosen for her decor. "Something smells incredible," Jesse said, inhaling the aroma of cinnamon and vanilla. "That would be my grandmother," Hesley said with a grin. "She's been cooking since 6 this morning. I hope you're hungry." Jesse followed her into the kitchen, where a small, elegant woman with silver hair and knowing eyes was flipping pancakes at the stove. Zora Rivera turned to study him with the intense scrutiny that only grandmothers could manage. And Jesse felt himself being measured against some internal standard he hoped desperately to meet. "So you're the young man who rescued my granddaughter from sitting alone at that wedding," Zora said, her voice carrying the slight accent of someone who had learned English as a second language, but spoke it with precision and grace. "Actually," Jesse said carefully, "I think she rescued me." Zora smiled, and Jesse felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "Good answer. You want to help with breakfast, or are you one of those men who thinks cooking is women's work?" "I'd love to help," Jesse replied honestly, "though I should warn you, my culinary skills are pretty limited." "Everyone can learn," Zora said, handing him a mixing bowl and ingredients. "Hesley, show him how to make the pancake batter properly." For the next hour, Jesse found himself inducted into the Rivera family breakfast tradition. Hesley stood close, beside him, guiding his hands as he mixed the batter, her shoulder brushing against his arm as she reached for ingredients. The simple intimacy of cooking together felt more romantic than any expensive restaurant dinner he'd ever experienced. "Not too much," Hesley warned as he added vanilla extract. Her hand covered his on the measuring spoon, and Jesse felt electricity shoot through him at the contact. "Just a little." "Like this?" he asked, acutely aware of how close she was, how her perfume mixed with the scent of cinnamon to create something intoxicating. "Perfect," she whispered, and when she looked up at him, Jesse felt the world narrow to just the two of them. They were interrupted by Zora, clearing her throat pointedly. "The griddle's ready," she announced with barely concealed amusement. As they cooked together, Jesse listened to Hesley and her grandmother's easy banter, learning pieces of their history through casual conversation. He discovered that Zora had immigrated from Cuba as a young woman, that she'd raised Hesley after her parents' death with a combination of fierce love and practical wisdom. He learned that Sunday morning pancakes were a tradition that had started when Hesley was 12 and grieving, a way for her grandmother to make their new life together feel like home. "You know," Zora said to Jesse as they sat down to eat, "Hesley's mother used to say that you could tell everything about a man by how he treated breakfast, whether he rushed through it to get to something more important, or whether he understood that sharing food is sharing love." Jesse looked across the table at Hesley, who was trying not to smile. "And what's the verdict?" "You pass," Zora said simply. "You helped cook. You set the table without being asked, and you're eating like you appreciate it instead of just being polite. That's because it's the best breakfast I've had in years, Jessie replied truthfully. After they ate, Zora mysteriously disappeared to run errands, leaving Jessie and Hesley alone to clean up. They worked together with natural ease, Jessie washing dishes while Hesley dried and put them away. The simple domesticity of it felt surprisingly intimate. "Your grandmother is amazing," Jessie said as they finished. "She likes you," Hesley replied. "That doesn't happen often. What about you?" Jessie asked, turning to face her. They were standing close in the small kitchen, and he could see flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "Do you like me?" Hesley felt her breath catch. "I think I do," she said softly. "That scares me." "Why?" "Because the last time I let myself like someone, it ended with me sitting alone at a wedding feeling like I wasn't worth choosing." Jessie stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face gently. "Hesley," he said, his voice low and intense, "look at me." She met his eyes, seeing sincerity and something deeper that made her heart race. "You are worth choosing. You are worth fighting for. You are worth everything." His thumb brushed over her cheekbone. "I know it's too soon to say this, but I've never felt anything like what I felt last night, talking to you until dawn. I've never wanted to wake up early just to spend more time with someone." "Jessie, I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But maybe we could be scared together." The kiss, when it came, was soft at first, tentative and sweet. But as Hesley's arms came up around his neck and Jessie pulled her closer, it deepened into something that spoke of hunger and hope and desperate longing. Jessie tasted like coffee and possibility, and Hesley found herself pressing closer, her hands tangling in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Jessie rested his forehead against hers, his hands still framing her face. "That was a..." Hesley started. "Yeah," Jessie agreed, understanding without needing words. They spent the rest of the afternoon on her small balcony, talking and laughing and stealing kisses when the conversation lulled. Jessie told her about his dreams, beyond business success, about wanting to build something meaningful that would last. Hesley shared her secret stories about her students, the way their innocent questions and boundless energy reminded her daily why love was worth believing in. As evening approached, Jessie reluctantly prepared to leave. "Have dinner with me tomorrow night?" he asked, reluctant to end their perfect day. "Yes," Hesley said without hesitation. As Jessie walked to his car, he felt lighter than he had in months. Behind her apartment window, Hesley watched him go with a smile she couldn't suppress. For the first time since Bryce's betrayal, she felt beautiful, desired, worthy of someone's time and attention. But in a car parked across the street, Peyton Mills lowered her camera and smiled coldly. Jessie always had been predictable in his choice of women. He liked them sweet, naive, and completely unprepared for the games people like her played. This one wouldn't last long once she learned a few uncomfortable truths. Chapter 4. When Hearts Choose Love Over Fear. Some battles for love are fought with grand gestures and passionate declarations, while others are won in quiet moments when two people choose to trust despite every reason they have to run. Monday evening brought the kind of late September thunderstorm that made Detroit feel dramatic and romantic. Jessie had arrived at Hesley's school just as she was locking up her classroom, his hair damp from running through the rain, his smile bright enough to rival the lightning illuminating the sky. He'd brought takeout from her favorite Caribbean restaurant and insisted they eat it on her apartment balcony despite the weather, both of them laughing as they tried to keep the food dry while rain misted around them. Now, 2 hours later, they sat curled together on her couch, sharing stories and comfortable silence while the storm continued its symphony outside. Jessie traced lazy patterns on Hesley's arm, marveling at how natural this felt, how perfectly she fit against his side. "Jessie," Hesley said suddenly, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that made him look down at her. "There's something I need to ask you. Anything. What do you do? I mean, I know you said you have a tech company, but..." She gestured vaguely. "You drive a BMW, you wear clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and you talk about flying to California for meetings like other people talk about driving to the grocery store." Jessie felt his stomach tighten. He'd known this conversation would come, but he'd hoped for more time before having to explain the magnitude of his wealth. So many relationships had ended the moment women discovered his net worth. Either they became gold diggers like Peyton, or they became intimidated and pulled away. "I developed an app called Connect Bridge," he said carefully. "It helps companies manage remote teams more effectively. I started it in my apartment 5 years ago, and it's done, well..." Hesley sat up straighter. "Connect Bridge. Jessie, that app is used by half the companies in Detroit. My school district uses it for our remote learning platforms." "Yeah? Yeah, which means..." She stared at him with growing realization. "You're not just successful. You're incredibly successful." Jessie waited for the moment he'd experienced so many times before, the shift in her expression, the recalculation of what their relationship could mean for her financially. Instead, Hesley looked almost worried. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Because I wanted you to get to know me first. Not my bank account, not what I could buy you or do for you, just me." Before Hesley could respond, they heard the sound of a car door slamming outside, followed by sharp knocking on her apartment door. Jessie felt Hesley tense beside him. "Are you expecting someone?" he asked. "No." Hesley went to the window and peered out. "Oh no, that's my brother Lennox's car." The knocking continued, more insistent now. Hesley opened the door to reveal a tall, broad-shouldered man with the same warm brown skin and intelligent eyes as his sister. Lennox Rivera was clearly agitated, rain dripping from his jacket, his expression stormy. "Lennox, what are you doing here?" Hesley asked. "I could ask you the same thing," Lennox replied, his gaze moving to Jessie. "Tamika called me. She's worried about you." "Worried about what?" "About the fact that you disappeared from her wedding with some stranger, and now, apparently, you're dating him?" Lennox stepped into the apartment without invitation, clearly in protective big brother mode. "Hesley, you just got out of a terrible relationship. Don't you think you're rebounding a little fast?" Jessie stood, recognizing the need to diffuse the situation. "You must be Lennox. I'm Jesse Owens." Lennox ignored the offered handshake. "I know who you are. I looked you up after Tamika told me what happened at the wedding." "Lennox," Hesley protested, "you investigated him." "Of course I did. My little sister disappears with a man worth $2 billion. You're damn right I investigated him." Jessie felt Hesley's sharp intake of breath beside him. $2 billion. She whispered. "Give or take," Lennox continued, his eyes never leaving Jessie. "CEO of Connect Bridge Technologies, recently single after a very public breakup with socialite Peyton Mills, and now apparently he's interested in an elementary school teacher from East Detroit." The room fell silent, except for the continued drumming of rain against the windows. Jessie could feel Hesley withdrawing emotionally, even though she hadn't moved physically. "Hesley," Jessie said softly, "let me explain." "Explain what?" Lennox interjected. "Explain why you didn't tell my sister that you're one of the richest men in Michigan. Explain what you want with her?" I want to get to know her," Jessie replied, his voice steady despite the anger building in his chest. I want to spend time with her because she's intelligent and kind and beautiful, and when I'm with her I feel like the best version of myself." "Right," Lennox scoffed, "and it has nothing to do with the fact that she's beautiful and naive, and exactly the kind of woman rich men collect as trophies." Jesse felt his temper snap. "Don't you dare reduce your sister to a trophy. She's worth 100 of me, and if you can't see that, then you don't deserve to call yourself her brother." Jesse," Hesley said quietly. "Please." But Jesse wasn't finished. "You want to know what I want with Hesley? I want to wake up every morning thinking about making her smile. I want to hear about her students and their small victories. I want to meet her grandmother properly and earn her approval. I want to build something real with the most genuine person I've ever met." The passion in his voice seemed to surprise both Rivera siblings. Lennox crossed his arms, still skeptical but no longer openly hostile. "And what happens when you get bored?" Lennox asked. "When the novelty wears off and you remember that you can have any woman you want?" Jesse looked directly at Hesley as he answered, "Then I'll be an idiot who lost the best thing that ever happened to him. But that's not going to happen, because I've already had women who wanted my money and my status. None of them made me feel like Hesley does." "How do I feel?" Hesley asked softly. Jesse turned to face her fully, his eyes intense with sincerity. "Like home, like the person I've been looking for my entire life without knowing it. Like maybe all the loneliness was worth it because it led me to you." Hesley felt tears prick her eyes. In the background, Lennox shifted uncomfortably, his protective stance softening as he witnessed the raw emotion between them. "Look," Lennox said finally, his voice gentler, "I just don't want to see you get hurt again. Bryce was bad enough, but the difference in your worlds. Don't you think that's my choice to make?" Hesley asked, finding her voice. Before anyone could answer, there was another knock at the door. This time, when Hesley opened it, she found a small, elegantly dressed woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and cold blue eyes standing in the hallway, shaking rain from her expensive umbrella. "Mrs. Owens," Hesley guessed, immediately recognizing the family resemblance in the sharp cheekbones and calculating gaze. Kinsley Owens stepped into the apartment, her gaze sweeping over the modest furnishings with barely concealed disdain. "Miss Rivera, I presume. I'm Jesse's mother, and we need to talk." Jesse appeared at Hesley's side, his jaw tight with tension. "Mother, what are you doing here?" "Cleaning up your mess, as usual." Kinsley's voice was crisp, businesslike, each word precisely enunciated like a weapon. "Jesse, darling, I know you're going through a difficult time after the Peyton situation, but this rebound has gone far enough." "This isn't a rebound," Jesse said firmly. "Of course it is. You're 38 years old and you're too intelligent to throw away your future on some passing infatuation with a woman who's completely unsuitable for your position in society." Hesley felt heat rise in her cheeks. Unsuitable. Kinsley turned to her with the smile of a shark, all teeth and no warmth. "My dear, I'm sure you're a lovely person in your own way, but surely you can see that this relationship has no future. Jesse needs someone who can move in his social circles, someone who understands the demands of his lifestyle, someone who can be an asset to his business, not a liability." "Someone like Peyton?" Hesley asked with deceptive sweetness. "At least Peyton understood what was expected of her." "You mean she understood how to use people for money?" Jesse's voice was dangerous now, low and controlled. "Mother, that's enough." "Jesse, be practical. What do you have in common with this woman? What could she possibly offer you that hundreds of more appropriate women couldn't?" Kinsley's voice carried the kind of cold certainty that came from years of social manipulation. Jesse looked at his mother with something approaching pity. "She offers me love, Mother. Genuine, honest love that has nothing to do with what I can buy her or where I can take her. She offers me a chance to be a better man than the one you raised me to be." Earlier that evening, Jesse had attempted to win Kinsley's approval by learning to make Hesley's favorite empanadas from a YouTube tutorial. He'd spent 2 hours in Hesley's kitchen, flour everywhere, trying to fold the dough properly, while Hesley offered gentle guidance. "Maybe a little less filling," she'd suggested diplomatically, as Jesse overstuffed another one. When he proudly put them in the oven, he'd set the temperature too high in his eagerness to impress his mother quickly. The smoke alarm shrieked through the apartment building, and Jessie frantically waved a dish towel while Hesley opened windows. "Well," she'd laughed as they stared at the charred remains, "your mother will definitely remember this dinner." The memory of their shared laughter felt precious now, in the face of his mother's cold disapproval. "And what about children?" Kinsley continued relentlessly. "Have you thought about the future? About what your children will look like? About how they'll fit into our world?" The implication hung in the air like poison. Hesley felt her chest tighten with a familiar pain. She'd heard variations of this her entire life, the subtle and not-so-subtle suggestions that her blackness made her somehow less than, unsuitable for certain spaces and certain people. "Stop." Jesse's voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp enough to make everyone in the room flinch. "If you finish that thought, if you say one more word that suggests there's anything wrong with the woman I love because of the color of her skin, you will never see me again." The room fell silent except for the continued drumming of rain against the windows. Kinsley looked genuinely shocked at her son's tone, as if she'd never seen this side of him before. "Hesley," Jesse continued, his voice softer now but no less intense, "I'm sorry. This is exactly why I wanted you to know me before you knew about the money. Because of people like this, who think wealth gives them the right to judge others, who think success means you can only love people who look like you or come from your world." Hesley looked around the room, at Lennox, protective but uncertain, at Kinsley, beautiful and cold and calculating, at Jesse, standing between her and his mother like a shield. The weight of his world, of the complications his wealth would bring, to her simple life, settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. "Maybe your mother is right," she said quietly. "Hesley, no. Maybe we're too different. Maybe this is just—" Jesse stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Look at me," he said urgently. "Tell me you don't feel what I feel. Tell me the last 3 days haven't meant anything to you." Hesley met his eyes and saw desperate hope there, mixed with a vulnerability that made her chest ache. "They've meant everything to me. That's the problem." "Why is that a problem?" "Because I'm falling for you, and I don't know if I can survive having my heart broken by someone I love this much." The admission hung in the air like a confession. Jesse's face transformed with wonder and relief, and even Lennox stepped forward, his protective anger softening into something like understanding. "Then don't let fear make the decision," Jesse said, his voice raw with emotion. "Let love make it." As if sensing the shift in the room, both Kinsley and Lennox began to protest, but Jesse held up a hand. "Mother, you raised me to be a man of integrity, to treat people with respect regardless of their background or bank account. If you can't accept the woman I choose to love, then you're not the mother I thought you were, and you're certainly not the woman Dad fell in love with." He turned to Lennox, his voice firm but respectful. "And you, if you love your sister half as much as I'm beginning to, you'll support her choices instead of trying to protect her from living. She's strong enough to make her own decisions and smart enough to see through anyone who doesn't deserve her." Finally, he looked at Hesley, his hands still holding hers. "I can't promise this will be easy. My world comes with complications yours. Doesn't. There will be people like my mother who think they have the right to judge us, but I can promise that I will choose you every single day, in every situation, against every objection. The question is, will you choose me back? Hesley looked into his eyes and saw her future there, complicated, uncertain, but filled with more love than she'd ever dared to imagine. She thought about her grandmother's words about broken pieces making beautiful mosaics, about love being worth the risk of pain. "Yes," she whispered, "I choose you back." As Jesse pulled her into his arms, kissing her with desperate relief while thunder rolled overhead, Lennox watched his sister's face transform with happiness and made a decision of his own. And neither of them noticed Kinsley slip quietly from the apartment, her face a mask of cold fury. She had phone calls to make, information to gather, and an unsuitable relationship to end, one way or another. Chapter 5. The Garden of Secrets and Dreams. Love grows most beautifully in secret places, tended by gentle hands and watered with whispered confessions that bloom like flowers in the darkness. The following Saturday evening, Jesse stood outside Hesley's apartment building with nervous energy coursing through his veins and a mysterious smile playing at his lips. He'd been planning this surprise all week, working with contractors and landscapers during every free moment to create something special, something that would show Hesley how serious he was about building a future with her. When she opened the door, Jesse's breath caught as it did every time he saw her. She wore a simple white sundress that made her skin glow in the evening light, her hair loose and natural around her shoulders. 3 weeks of knowing her, and she still made his heart race like a teenager with his first crush. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning down to kiss her softly. "Thank you," Hesley replied, noting the excitement he was trying to hide. "So where are we going that requires me to dress for warm weather in October?" "It's a surprise," Jesse said, taking her hand and leading her to his car. "Trust me?" "I'm learning too," she said, and the simple honesty of her response made Jesse's chest tighten with emotion. They drove through the city as sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. Jesse navigated through the downtown area toward the riverfront, but instead of stopping at one of the restaurants or entertainment venues, he pulled into the parking garage of a high-rise residential building. "Jesse?" Hesley looked up at the gleaming tower with confusion. "What are we doing here?" "You'll see," he said, guiding her to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. They rode to the top floor in comfortable silence, Hesley's curiosity growing with each passing floor. When the elevator opened, Jesse led her down a hallway to a door marked "Roof Access, Authorized Personnel Only." Should we be up here?" Hesley asked as Jesse produced another key card. "I live in the penthouse," Jesse said with a grin. "I think I'm authorized." The door opened onto the most magical space Hesley had ever seen. What had once been an empty rooftop had been transformed into an enchanted garden. Strings of warm white lights created a canopy overhead like captured stars. Flower beds filled with roses, jasmine, and herbs created intimate pathways leading to a central seating area. The Detroit skyline stretched out in every direction, but the garden felt private and secret, like a world apart from the city below. "Jesse," Hesley breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "This is incredible. When did you—" "This week," Jesse said, watching her face with nervous anticipation. "I wanted to create something beautiful that was ours. Somewhere we could come to talk and dream and just be together." Hesley noticed the flower beds weren't fully planted yet. Several areas had been prepared, but left empty, waiting. "Why isn't it finished?" Jesse's smile turned tender. "Because I wanted us to finish it together. I hoped we could Plant the rest of it side by side. Choose what grows here together. The thoughtfulness of the gesture overwhelmed her. This wasn't just a romantic surprise. It was a metaphor, an invitation to build something beautiful together from the ground up. "Show me," she said softly. For the next hour they worked side by side in the soft earth, planting lavender and rosemary, white roses and climbing jasmine. Jessie had thought of everything: gardening gloves, tools, a small watering can. As they planted, they talked about their dreams and fears, their voices mixing with the gentle sounds of the city below. "I used to help my grandmother in her garden," Hesley said as she carefully positioned a rose bush. "After my parents died, it was one of the ways we bonded. She said gardens teach you about hope. You plant something small and trust it will grow into something beautiful." Jessie paused in his planting of herbs to watch her. "What else did she teach you?" "That love is like gardening too. It requires patience, attention and faith, that even when things look dead in winter, spring always comes." Hesley looked up at him, her hands dirty with soil. "But it also requires the right conditions to grow." "And what are the right conditions?" "Trust, honesty, the willingness to tend to each other even when it's hard work." Jessie set down his tools and moved closer to her. "Hesley, there's something I need to tell you, something about why I wanted to create this place with you." Her heart skipped with anxiety. "What is it?" Jessie took her hands, not caring about the dirt. "I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. It scares me because it's so intense, so fast. But it also feels like the most real thing in my life." "Jessie." "Let me finish," he said gently. "I know we've only known each other a few weeks. I know my world comes with complications that yours doesn't. But I also know that every morning I wake up thinking about you, and every night I fall asleep grateful that you exist." Hesley felt tears prick her eyes. "I feel the same way. That's what scares me." "Why?" "Because I've never felt this much for someone before. With Bryce, I loved him, but it was comfortable, safe. This feels like standing on the edge of a cliff." Jessie cupped her face with his dirty hands, leaving smudges of earth on her cheeks. "Then let's jump together." When he kissed her this time, it was different from their previous kisses. This one spoke of promises and commitment, of a man who had made up his mind completely. Hesley kissed him back with equal intensity, her arms coming up around his neck as she pressed closer to him. They moved from the flower beds to the comfortable seating area Jessie had created, a collection of outdoor furniture arranged to take advantage of the view. As the city lights began to twinkle below them, they settled together on the outdoor couch, Hesley curled against Jessie's side. "Tell me about your family," Jessie said, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "Besides your grandmother and Lennox." "There's not much family left," Hesley said. "My parents were everything to each other, high school sweethearts who built this beautiful life together. When they died, it felt like the universe had made some cosmic mistake. Two people who loved each other that much weren't supposed to be taken away so young. How old were you?" 12. Old enough to understand that they were gone, but young enough to still believe that if I was good enough, maybe they'd come back." Hesley's voice grew soft. "My grandmother always said they're still together somewhere, still loving each other. I used to think that was beautiful. Now I wonder if it's worth it, loving someone so much that losing them destroys you." Jessie tightened his arms around her. "Is that why you're scared of us?" "Partly. My parents' love was epic, but it was also fragile. One car accident and it was over. Everything they'd built together finished." "But they had 12 years together," Jessie said quietly. 12 years of the kind of love most people never find. Don't you think that was worth it?" Hesley looked up at him, studying his face in the soft light. "Do you?" "I'm starting to think it might be. Before I met you, I thought love was a business transaction. You give something, you get something in return. But this, what I feel, for you, it's not transactional, it just is. They talked until well past midnight, sharing stories and dreams under the canopy of lights. Jesse told her about his father, who had died when Jesse was 25, and how the loss had driven him to work harder, achieve more, always trying to make his father proud posthumously. Hesley shared her dream of opening a school for underprivileged children, a place where kids could learn and grow in an environment of unconditional love and support. "We could do that together," Jesse said suddenly. "What?" "Your school. We could make it happen. I have the resources, you have the vision and the heart for it." Hesley sat up straighter. "Jesse, I can't let you just buy me my dreams. It wouldn't be me buying you anything. It would be us building something together, something that matters." The offer was tempting, but Hesley felt overwhelmed by the implications. "It's too much, too fast." "Then we'll take it slow. We'll plan it, research it, make sure it's right. But Hesley, imagine what we could accomplish together, your compassion and my resources, working towards something bigger than both of us." As Jesse spoke, his eyes shining with excitement and possibility, Hesley felt herself falling deeper. This wasn't a man trying to buy her love with expensive gifts. This was a man who wanted to help her change the world. "I think," she said slowly, "that you might be the most dangerous man I've ever met." "Dangerous how?" "Because you make me believe in impossible things. You make me think that maybe epic love stories don't have to end in tragedy." Jesse pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "Maybe they don't. Maybe the best love stories are the ones that last a lifetime." As they prepared to leave their secret garden, both felt the weight of what was building between them. This was no longer a simple attraction or even a strong infatuation. This was love, real and powerful and absolutely terrifying in its intensity. But as they walked hand in hand to the elevator, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the building across the street, or the long-range camera capturing their intimate moments. Some love stories faced challenges from within, while others battled enemies who preferred to attack from the shadows. Chapter 6. The Letter and First Proposal Attempt. Sometimes the most beautiful moments are born from the ashes of our deepest. Pain and love letters written by the dead can guide the living toward their greatest happiness. November arrived in Detroit with the kind of crisp clarity that made the city feel reborn. Jesse had been practically floating for the past month, his business meetings punctuated by text messages from Hesley, his evenings spent in her apartment or their rooftop garden, learning the intricate rhythms of loving someone completely. He'd never experienced anything like the peace that settled over him when she laughed at his jokes, the way his chest expanded with pride when she talked about her students, the absolute rightness of waking up next to her on the morning she stayed over. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was the night he'd been planning for 2 weeks, ever since the moment he'd realized that he couldn't imagine a future that didn't include Hesley Rivera as his wife. The ring burned like a secret in his jacket pocket as he made final adjustments to their rooftop garden. He'd added more lights, more flowers, and a small table set for 2 with champagne and her favorite dessert from the little bakery near her school. Every detail had been planned to perfection, from the playlist of songs that had meaning for them, to the specific spot where he planned to drop to one knee. At 7:30, exactly on time, Jesse heard the elevator opening. His heart hammered as Hesley stepped onto the rooftop, her face lighting up with delight at the romantic scene he'd created. "Jesse," she said, that soft smile he loved spreading across her features. "What's all this?" "This," he said, taking her hands and pulling her close, is me being grateful that I have something beautiful to celebrate. What are we celebrating? 2 months, Jesse said, his voice warm with affection. 2 months since a beautiful woman agreed to pretend to be mine for one night and changed my life completely. Hesley felt her chest tighten with emotion. Had it really only been 2 months? It felt like she'd known Jesse for years, like he'd always been part of her life. It feels like longer. In the best way, Jesse agreed, leading her to the table he'd prepared. They ate dinner slowly, savoring both the food and each other's company. Jesse seemed more attentive than usual, if that was possible, hanging on her every word, his eyes never leaving her face. There was an energy about him, an excitement he was trying to contain but couldn't quite hide. "You're planning something," Hesley said as they finished dessert. "Maybe," Jesse replied with that boyish grin she adored. "Jesse Owens, what are you up to?" Instead of answering, Jesse stood and walked to a small chest he'd placed near the flower. Beds. From it, he withdrew an old wooden box worn smooth by age and handling. "Before I tell you what I'm up to," he said, returning to sit beside her, "there's something I want to share with you. Something I found last week when I was going through my father's things." Hesley noticed the emotion in his voice when he mentioned his father. In all their conversations, Jesse had spoken of David Owens with reverence and lingering grief, but had never shared much detail about the man who had raised him. Jesse opened the box carefully, revealing letters tied with ribbon, old photographs, and various mementos. From the collection, he withdrew a single envelope, yellowed with age. "My father wrote this letter to me before he died," Jesse said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never knew it existed until last week. My mother had hidden it with his things, probably thinking it would be too painful for me to read." "Jesse, are you sure you want to share this with me?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He carefully unfolded the letter, the paper crackling slightly. He wrote it when the doctors told him he only had a few weeks left. Jesse cleared his throat and began to read, his father's words carrying across the quiet rooftop. "My dear son, if you're reading this, then I've gone on to whatever comes next, and I hope I've left you prepared for the life ahead of you. I know I pushed you hard, maybe too hard sometimes, to achieve and succeed. But what I really wanted was for you to find what your mother and I found together, a love that makes you better than you ever thought you could be. Success in business means nothing if you come home to an empty house. Money means nothing if you have no one to share your dreams with. I made many mistakes in my life, Jesse, but loving your mother completely and without reservation was not one of them. Every day I chose her was a day I chose joy. Someday, if you're lucky, you'll meet a woman who changes the very air you breathe, who makes you understand that everything before her was just practice for the real thing. When that happens, and you'll know it when it does, don't let pride or fear or other people's opinions keep you from claiming that love. Be brave enough to love completely, son. It's the only thing that matters in the end." Jesse's voice broke slightly on the last words. He looked up to find Hesley watching him with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Hesley," he said, setting the letter aside and taking her hands, "I found that letter the same day I realized I wanted to marry you. The same day I knew that you were the woman my father was talking about, the one who changes the very air I breathe." Hesley's heart stopped. "Jesse." He slid from his chair onto one knee, withdrawing the ring box from his pocket with hands that trembled slightly. "Hesley Rivera, you have made me braver and kinder and more myself than I've ever been. You've shown me what it means to love someone not for what they can give you, but for who they are when no one else is watching." The ring was perfect, a Simple solitaire that caught the light from their garden lights and sparkled like captured starlight. Not ostentatious or massive, but elegant and timeless and utterly right. "Will you marry me?" Jesse asked, his voice raw with hope and vulnerability. "Will you build a life with me, and dream with me, and love me even when I'm difficult and stubborn and completely impossible?" Hesley stared down at him, this beautiful man who had stormed into her life and turned everything upside down in the best possible way. Her heart was screaming yes, every fiber of her being singing with joy at the thought of being his wife. But as she opened her mouth to accept, a voice called out from the elevator area. "Well, isn't this romantic?" Both Jesse and Hesley turned to see Peyton Mills emerging from the elevator, her blonde hair perfect despite the November wind, her smile sharp as a blade. She wore a designer coat that probably cost more than Hesley made in 3 months, and she moved with the confidence of a woman accustomed to getting her way. "Peyton," Jesse said, his voice flat with shock and anger. He rose slowly from his kneeling position, instinctively moving to place himself between his ex-fiancée and the woman he loved. "Hello, darling," Peyton said, her voice saccharine sweet. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "How did you get up here?" Jesse demanded. "This requires a key card." Peyton held up a card with a triumphant smile. "I still had mine from when we were engaged. You really should be more careful about changing your access codes." Hesley felt the moment deflating around them like a punctured balloon. The magic of Jesse's proposal, the beauty of his father's letter, the perfect romance of the evening, all of it tainted by the presence of this woman who represented everything toxic about Jesse's past. "What do you want, Peyton?" Jesse asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "To talk to you. Privately." Peyton's gaze flicked dismissively to Hesley. "Some things are better discussed without an audience. There's nothing you could possibly have to say to me that Hesley can't hear." Peyton's smile widened, and Hesley felt a chill of foreboding. "Are you sure about that, Jesse? Because what I have to tell you is going to change everything." She paused dramatically, clearly savoring the moment. "I'm pregnant, darling. With your baby." The words hit like a physical blow. Hesley felt the blood drain from her face as Jesse went completely still beside her. "That's impossible," Jesse said finally. "Is it? We were together until 3 months ago, Jesse. These things happen even when people are careful." Peyton placed a perfectly manicured hand over her still flat stomach. "I've been to the doctor. I have the test results if you'd like to see them." Hesley felt her world tilting sideways. 3 months ago. Right around the time she'd met Jesse, at the wedding, which meant, "I need to go," she said quietly, backing toward the elevator. "Hesley, wait," Jesse said desperately, reaching for her. "This doesn't change anything between us." "Doesn't it?" Hesley asked, her voice barely above. A whisper. "She's carrying your child, Jesse, your child. If she's even telling the truth—" "Oh, I'm telling the truth," Peyton interrupted, pulling out her phone to show them what appeared to be ultrasound images. 12 weeks along, due in late May. 12 weeks. The math was devastating. Hesley looked at Jesse, seeing her own shock and horror reflected in his eyes. "Congratulations," Hesley said, her voice hollow. She turned and walked toward the elevator with as much dignity as she could muster. "Hesley, please," Jesse called after her. "Don't leave. We can figure this out together." But Hesley was already stepping into the elevator, her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall until she was alone. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was Jesse standing in their beautiful garden, the ring box still clutched in his hand, looking like a man whose world had just collapsed around him. As the elevator descended, carrying her away from the most beautiful moment of her life and toward what felt like the end of everything, Hesley couldn't help but think that maybe Bryce had been right after all. Maybe she really was the kind of woman who would never be chosen first, who would always come second to someone else's claim. But high above her, in a garden filled with flowers they had planted together, Jessie was making a very different calculation, one that involved private investigators, DNA tests, and the growing certainty that Peyton Mills was playing a very dangerous game with the wrong man's heart. Chapter 7. Truth in the Rain. Truth has a way of surfacing like flowers after winter snow, and sometimes the most beautiful reconciliations happen when two hearts refuse to let lies win over love. For 3 days, Jessie felt like he was drowning. 3 days since Peyton's bombshell announcement had destroyed what should have been the happiest moment of his life. 3 days since Hesley had walked away from him with devastation in her eyes and his engagement ring burning a hole in his pocket. 3 days of calling her constantly, only to have every call go straight to voicemail. 3 days of camping outside her school, her apartment, anywhere he thought she might appear, only to be met with silence. Camden had finally physically dragged him to his office on Wednesday morning, tired of watching his best friend and business partner fall apart over what he was convinced had to be some kind of elaborate lie. "Think about it logically," Camden said, setting a cup of coffee in front of Jessie that would probably go cold and untouched like all the others. Peyton disappears for months after your breakup. She doesn't contact you, doesn't try to win you back, doesn't even acknowledge your existence. Then suddenly, the night you're planning to propose to someone else, she shows up claiming to be pregnant. Jessie stared out his office window at the Detroit skyline, barely registering his friend's words. Somewhere out there, Hesley was going through her days believing that he had gotten another woman pregnant while building a relationship with her. The thought made his chest feel like it was caving in. "The timing is suspicious," Camden continued. "How did she even know you were planning to propose?" That question had been nagging at Jessie too. He'd told no one about the proposal except Camden, and he trusted his friend completely. So how had Peyton known to arrive at exactly the right moment for maximum damage? "I hired a private investigator," Jessie said quietly. "Good. What did they find?" "Preliminary results came back this morning." Jessie finally turned from the window, and Camden was shocked by how haggard his friend looked. "The ultrasound images she showed us, they're not hers. They were lifted from a pregnancy forum online." Camden sat forward. "So she's not pregnant?" "Oh, she's pregnant. The blood test confirms that much. But the timeline doesn't add up." Jessie pulled out a folder from his desk. "According to her medical records, she's 8 weeks pregnant, not 12, which means conception happened in mid-September. After you'd already met Hesley." 6 weeks after I met Hesley, which means the baby isn't mine." Jessie's voice was hollow, with exhaustion. "She lied about the timing to make it seem possible that I was the father." Why would she do that? Jessie thought about Peyton's cold smile, the satisfaction in her eyes as she'd watched his proposal crumble. "Because she can't stand that I moved on, because she wants to destroy any chance I have of being happy with someone else. So tell Hesley the truth. She won't see me. She won't take my calls. Her brother threatened to have me arrested for stalking if I don't stop showing up at her apartment." Jessie ran his hands through his hair. "I don't blame her. From her perspective, I got my ex-fiancée pregnant while telling her I loved her." Camden was quiet for a long moment. "There has to be a way to reach her. There is one person she might listen to." That afternoon, Jessie found himself standing nervously outside a small house in East Detroit, holding the folder of evidence that proved Peyton's lies. The door opened before he could knock, revealing Zora Rivera, Hesley's grandmother, looking like she'd been expecting him. "Mrs. Rivera," Jessie said. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "Come in, young man," Zora said, her voice neither hostile nor welcoming. "We have things to discuss." Zora's living room was warm and comfortable, filled with photographs of Hesley at various ages, and the scent of something delicious cooking in the kitchen. Jessie sat carefully on the edge of the couch, acutely aware that he was being evaluated by someone whose opinion could change everything. "My granddaughter is heartbroken," Zora said without preamble. "She hasn't eaten more than a few bites since Sunday night. She goes through the motions at school, comes home, and cries herself to sleep." Each word was like a knife to Jessie's chest. "Mrs. Rivera, I know how this looks, but—" "Let me finish," Zora interrupted. "Hesley told me what happened. She also told me she loves you more than she's ever loved anyone, which is why this is destroying her." Jessie felt tears prick his eyes. "I love her too. More than I knew it was possible to love someone." "Then prove it." Zora leaned forward. "Show me these papers you brought." For the next hour, Jessie laid out everything the private investigator had discovered. Peyton's real medical timeline, the fake ultrasound images, even evidence that she'd been having an affair with a married businessman around the time of conception. Zora studied the documents carefully, asking pointed questions that proved she was sharper than her age might suggest. Finally, she leaned back in her chair with a sigh. "That woman is evil," she said simply. "Yes, she is, and I'm an idiot for not seeing it sooner." Jessie leaned forward urgently. "Mrs. Rivera, I need Hesley to know the truth. I need her to know that I would never, ever betray her like that. Why should she believe you? Why should any of us believe you?" The question hit Jessie like a physical blow, but it was fair. "Because I'm willing to take a DNA test. Because I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove that the only woman I've been with since the day I met your granddaughter is your granddaughter." Zora was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "You really love her." "I love her enough to let her go, if that's what would make her happy. I love her enough to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of her if she'll give me the chance. I love her enough to fight Peyton Mills and anyone else who tries to hurt her. And if this other woman really is carrying someone else's child, then I hope she gets the help she clearly needs, and I hope the real father steps up to take responsibility. But it has nothing to do with me, and it has nothing to do with Hesley." Zora stood up suddenly. "Come with me." She led Jessie to the kitchen, where she began pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "You're going to help me cook dinner," she announced, "and then you're going to sit at my table and eat it, and we're going to have a real conversation about what kind of man you are." "Mrs. Rivera." "Call me Abuela," she said, with the first smile he'd seen from her. "If you're going to marry my granddaughter, we might as well get used to being family." As they cooked together, Jessie found himself telling Zora things he'd never told anyone. About the loneliness of success without someone to share it with. About his fear that he was fundamentally unlovable because of his wealth. About the way Hesley had made him feel worthy and whole for the first time in his life. "She's scared," Zora said as they sat down to eat. "Not just of this situation, but of loving someone as much as she loves you." "Why?" "Her parents," Zora explained. "They loved each other completely, passionately. When they died, I watched that little girl learn that the deepest love comes with the deepest pain. She spent her whole life trying to love safely, to protect herself from ever hurting that much again." Jessie felt understanding dawn, "And now she thinks I've proven that complete love isn't safe." "Exactly. So if you want her back, you need to show her that some love is worth the risk, that some people are worth trusting completely." As if summoned, By their conversation, they heard the front door open. Hesley's voice called out, "Abuela, I'm here for dinner." Jesse's heart stopped as footsteps approached the kitchen. When Hesley appeared in the doorway and saw him sitting at her grandmother's table, the color drained from her face. "What is he doing here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He came to show me some papers," Zora said calmly. "Papers? You need to see. I don't want to hear any more lies." Jesse stood slowly, his hands shaking. "Hesley, please, just give me 5 minutes to show you the truth." "The truth?" Hesley's voice broke. "The truth is that while you were telling me you loved me, you were sleeping with your ex-fiancé." "That's not what happened. That's not what happened at all." Thunder rumbled outside, and the first drops of rain began hitting the windows. Hesley looked at the papers on the table, at her grandmother's expectant face, at Jesse's desperate expression. "5 minutes," she said finally. Jesse quickly explained what the private investigator had found, showing her the evidence that proved Peyton had lied about the timing. He watched Hesley's face as understanding dawned, saw the moment hope began to war with the hurt in her eyes. "So she's pregnant, but not with your child," Hesley said slowly. "That's right. The baby was conceived weeks after we met, and I haven't been with Peyton since before I met you. I swear to you, Hesley, on my father's grave, I swear I have never betrayed you." Hesley sank into a chair, the emotional whiplash overwhelming. Why would she do this? Because she's cruel. Because she can't stand that I found something real with you when what we had was fake. Jessie knelt beside her chair. Because she knows that what we have is worth destroying. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows like nature's percussion section. Hesley looked at this man who had turned her world upside down, who had made her believe in epic love stories again, who had just proven that sometimes people were worth trusting completely. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry she put you through this. Not of that. I was scared of how much I love you, scared of needing someone that much." Jessie took her hands, not caring that they were still shaking. "Then be scared with me, because I've never needed anyone the way I need you, and it terrifies me every single day." Hesley looked into his eyes and saw her own fear reflected back, mixed with a love so deep it took her breath away. "Jessie, I know it's been an awful few days. I know you need time to trust me again, but I'm not giving up on us. I'm not letting her win." Hesley stood suddenly, pulling Jessie to his feet. "Come with me." "Where are we going?" "Outside. I want to dance in the rain with the man I love." As they stepped onto Zora's front porch, the storm was in full force, rain falling in sheets that soaked them immediately. But Jessie pulled Hesley into his arms anyway, spinning her around on the wet porch while she laughed with pure joy. "I love you," Jessie said, having to shout over the storm. "I love you too," Hesley shouted back. "I love you too much to let fear win." When Jessie kissed her, it was desperate and hungry and full of relief. They were both soaked to the skin, rain streaming down their faces, but neither cared. This was their storm, their reconciliation, their choice to trust love over fear. "Marry me," Jessie said against her lips. "Right here, right now in the rain. Marry me because life is short and love is rare, and I can't waste another minute not being your husband." "Yes," Hesley said without hesitation. "Yes, yes, yes." As thunder rolled overhead and lightning illuminated the sky, Jessie produced the ring he'd carried with him for 3 days, slipping it onto Hesley's finger while rain made everything sparkle like diamonds. Inside the house, Zora Rivera watched from the window and smiled, remembering another couple who had danced in the rain many years ago. Some love stories she knew were worth weathering any storm. Chapter 8. The greatest gift of forgiveness. True, strength is not found in revenge, but in the grace to forgive those who have wronged you, and sometimes the most powerful victory is helping your enemies find their way back to the light. The morning after their engagement, Jessie woke up in Hesley's apartment with her curled against his side, her engagement ring catching the early sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows. For a moment, he just lay there, marveling at how perfect she looked in the golden light, how right this felt, how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. But as consciousness fully returned, so did the anger. Peyton Mills had nearly destroyed the most beautiful thing in his life, had deliberately and methodically tried to tear apart his relationship with Hesley out of pure spite. The old Jesse, the businessman who had built an empire through strategic thinking and calculated moves, wanted revenge. He wanted to expose her lies publicly, to ruin her reputation the way she'd tried to ruin his happiness. Hesley stirred beside him, her eyes fluttering open to find him watching her. "Good morning, fiancé," she said with a sleepy smile that made his heart skip. "Good morning, future Mrs. Owens," Jessie replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "How does it feel to be engaged to a man who almost let his ex-fiancé destroy everything?" "It feels like I'm engaged to a man who fought for us," Hesley said, sitting up and stretching. "Although I have to ask, what are you planning to do about Peyton?" Jessie felt his jaw clench. "What do you mean?" "I can see it in your eyes. You're planning something, some way to get back at her for what she did." Jessie sat up too, running his hands through his hair. "She tried to destroy us, Hesley. She lied, she manipulated, she nearly cost me the only woman I've ever truly loved. Are you saying I should just let that go?" "I'm saying I know you, and I know that the man I fell in love with is better than revenge." Before Jessie could respond, his phone rang. Camden's name flashed on the screen. "Jessie, you need to see the news," Camden said without preamble. "Channel 4 has a story about Peyton Mills. It's not good." Jessie turned on Hesley's television, flipping to the local news station. A reporter stood outside the offices of Mills and Associates, Peyton's father's law firm, with a serious expression. Sources confirm that Peyton Mills, daughter of prominent attorney Robert Mills, was arrested early this morning on charges of fraud and identity theft. According to police, Miss Mills allegedly used stolen medical records to fabricate pregnancy documents in an attempt to extort money from an unnamed businessman. Jessie felt his blood run cold. "I didn't do this," he said quickly, seeing Hesley's shocked expression. "I swear to you, I didn't call the police." The news report continued with more devastating details. Apparently, Peyton's lies had been far more extensive than just the fake pregnancy timeline. She'd been running elaborate scams on multiple wealthy men using falsified medical records and forged documents to extract money through blackmail and emotional manipulation. The investigation began, the reporter continued, when the real father of Miss Mills's unborn child came forward with evidence of her deception. Marcus Townsend, a married businessman, contacted authorities after Miss Mills attempted to extort $50,000 from him in exchange for keeping their affair secret. Jesse's phone buzzed with a text from his private investigator. "Didn't expect the real father to come clean this quickly. Sometimes guilty consciences work faster than detective work." "So it's over," Hesley said quietly. "She can't hurt anyone else now." But Jesse felt no satisfaction in Peyton's downfall. Looking at the woman he loved, seeing the compassion in her eyes, even for someone who had tried to destroy their happiness, he realized something important about the kind of man he wanted to be. "I need to go see her," he said suddenly. "What?" Hesley stared at him. "Jesse, she tried to ruin our relationship. She's facing criminal charges. Why would you want to see her?" "Because," Jessie said, understanding it fully for the first time. Holding on to anger about this is going to poison what we're building together. And because maybe she needs to understand that there's another way to live. But first, Jessie had one more proposal planned. He'd been working on it for weeks, a surprise at Hesley's school that he hoped would finally convince her to say yes. The previous attempts had all been interrupted or mistimed, but this one would be different. The next afternoon, Jessie arrived at Lincoln Elementary during Hesley's planning period, carrying what appeared to be a large bouquet of flowers. He'd arranged with the principal to make an announcement over the intercom, calling all teachers to the main hallway for a special surprise for Miss Rivera. As teachers gathered, Jessie took a deep breath and got down on one knee in the hallway, pulling out the ring box. "Hesley Rivera," he began, his voice carrying down the corridor. "You make every day brighter just by existing, and I—" "Oh, my goodness, yes," interrupted a voice. "I thought you'd never ask." Jessie looked up in shock to see Mrs. Henderson, the 60-year-old math teacher, standing directly in front of him with tears in her eyes. She wore the exact same blue dress as Hesley, who stood frozen about 10 feet away, her mouth hanging open. The entire hallway erupted in laughter as Mrs. Henderson clasped her hands to her chest dramatically. "I've been waiting for this moment for months, dear. Ever since you started bringing Hesley those beautiful lunches." Jessie's face turned crimson as he realized his mistake. "Mrs. Henderson, this is—" "Don't be shy now," Mrs. Henderson beamed, reaching for the ring box. "Though I have to say I didn't expect such a large diamond. My Harold never spent this much on jewelry." By now, even Hesley was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. The other teachers were in tears, and several had pulled out their phones to record the moment. "Mrs. Henderson," Jessie managed, standing up slowly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Oh," Mrs. Henderson said, looking around the hallway and finally spotting Hesley doubled over with laughter. "Oh my, this is embarrassing." She patted Jessie's arm sympathetically. "Well, dear, you might want to face the right direction next time." Jessie turned to Hesley, who was wiping tears from her eyes. "So," she called out, still giggling, "are you going to propose to me, or are you and Mrs. Henderson planning a spring wedding?" "Definitely you," Jessie said, walking over to her and dropping to one knee again, this time in front of the right woman. "Though I have to say, Mrs. Henderson's enthusiasm is very encouraging." "Ask me properly," Hesley said, her eyes dancing with mirth. Jessie took her hands, no longer caring about the audience. "Hesley Rivera, will you marry me? Will you promise to laugh at all my mistakes even when I propose to the wrong woman in a crowded hallway?" "Yes," Hesley said softly. "I'll marry you. But I'm keeping the story about Mrs. Henderson forever." As Jessie slipped the ring onto her finger, Mrs. Henderson started a round of applause that echoed through the entire school. "Well," she announced to the crowd, "that was much more entertaining than my usual Tuesday afternoon." Later that evening, after they'd celebrated with her colleagues and called their families, Jessie kept his appointment to see Peyton. 2 hours later, Jessie sat across from Peyton Mills in a sterile jail visiting room. She looked smaller somehow, her usually perfect appearance disheveled, her confidence completely shattered. When she saw him, her face crumpled. "I suppose you're here to gloat," she said, not meeting his eyes. "No," Jessie said simply. "I'm here to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you did it. Why you tried so hard to hurt me when I never did anything but love you." Peyton laughed bitterly. "Love me? You loved the idea of me, the perfect socialite wife who would look good at your business functions and never ask for anything real." Jessie considered this. "Maybe you're right. Maybe what I thought was love was really just comfort. But that doesn't excuse what you did to Hesley and me." "Your precious Hesley," Peyton spat. Do you have any idea how it felt to watch you with her, to see you look at her the way you never looked at me, to realize that you were capable of the kind of love you never felt for me? Peyton. Nadine, I spent 8 months planning our wedding, Jesse. 8 months choosing flowers and invitations and dreaming about our future together. And then Marcus came along, and I felt something I'd never felt with you, and I thought maybe if I was honest about it, maybe you'd fight for me. Jesse felt a flash of understanding. But I didn't fight. You barely seemed upset. You just accepted it and moved on like I'd never mattered at all. Tears streamed down Peyton's face. And then I saw you with her, and I realized that you were capable of grand gestures and romantic surprises, and all the things you never did for me. I realized that I wasn't the problem with our relationship. You just never really loved me. Jesse leaned forward. You're right. I never loved you the way you deserved to be loved. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I wasted your time, and mine pretending we had something we didn't. Peyton looked up, surprised by his honesty. But Peyton, what you did, trying to destroy my relationship with Hesley, lying about the pregnancy, manipulating other men, that wasn't about me. That was about you being in so much pain that you wanted everyone else to hurt too. So what? You're here to psychoanalyze me? I'm here to tell you that there's another way, that you can choose to use this rock bottom as a foundation to build something better. Jesse pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. This is a therapist who specializes in helping people who've made mistakes rebuild their lives. And this, he slid over another card, is the best defense attorney in Detroit. I've already put $10,000 in an account to pay for both. Peyton stared at the cards like they might explode. Why would you do this? Because the woman I love taught me that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Because I want to be worthy of her, which means being someone who helps instead of hurts. I tried to destroy your happiness. You tried, but you failed. Hesley and I are stronger because of what we survived together. And maybe, if you get the help you need, you can find the kind of real love you were looking for in all the wrong places. Jesse stood to leave, then paused. Peyton, you're not a bad person. You're a hurt person who made bad choices, but it's not too late to make better ones. That afternoon, Jesse returned to Hesley's classroom as she was finishing her lesson for the day. He watched from the doorway as she read to her second graders, her voice animated and warm, bringing the story to life for children who hung on her every word. Mr. Jesse, several of the children called out when they noticed him, having met him during previous visits. How are my favorite students today? Jesse asked, crouching down to their level. Miss Rivera told us you're going to marry her, said Amara, a precocious 7-year-old with pigtails. Does that mean you'll be our teacher too? It means I'll be the luckiest man in the world, Jesse said, catching Hesley's eye across the room, because I get to marry the best teacher in Detroit. After the children had been dismissed, Hesley approached Jesse with curiosity in her eyes. How did it go with Peyton? Jesse told her everything, about Peyton's pain and jealousy, about his decision to help pay for her legal defense and therapy. He watched Hesley's face carefully, hoping she would understand. You paid for her lawyer? Hesley asked when he finished. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds like something the man I love would do, Hesley said softly. It sounds like forgiveness in action. Jesse felt relief flood through him. I realized that the kind of husband I want to be to you, the kind of father I want to be to our future children, isn't the kind of man who seeks revenge. It's the kind of man who believes people can change. Hesley stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. This is why I love you. This is why I knew you were different from every other man I'd ever met. Even after everything she put us through, especially after everything she put us through. Because You could have destroyed her, and instead you chose to try to heal her. Hesley smiled. That's the heart of the man I'm going to marry. As they walked hand in hand to Jesse's car, both felt lighter somehow. The Peyton chapter of their story was finally closed, but instead of ending with bitterness and revenge, it had ended with compassion and hope. But as they drove through the Detroit streets toward their future, neither of them noticed the figure watching from across the street. Someone whose connection to their story ran deeper than either of them knew, and whose appearance would soon test everything they thought they understood about love, family, and second chances. Chapter 9. Almost Lost Forever. Sometimes the greatest love stories teeter on the edge of tragedy, where hearts that beat as one must face the possibility of beating alone, and courage is measured not in staying, but in the willingness to risk everything for a chance at forever. December in Detroit arrived with unusual warmth, as if the city itself couldn't bear to add winter's chill to the emotional storm brewing in Jesse and Hesley's relationship. 6 weeks had passed since Peyton's arrest. 6 weeks of seeming perfection as they planned their spring wedding and built their future together. But beneath the surface, old wounds were festering, and the very intensity of their love had become the source of their greatest fear. Jesse stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city he'd conquered spread out below him, and felt more helpless than he ever had in his life. In 3 hours, Hesley would board a plane to Portland, Oregon, where she'd accepted a teaching position at an innovative elementary school that specialized in working with underprivileged children. It was her dream job, everything she'd ever wanted professionally, and she was running toward it like a woman escaping a burning building. The irony wasn't lost on him. After everything they'd survived, Peyton's lies, his mother's disapproval, the complicated merger of their two very different worlds, it wasn't external forces that were tearing them apart. It was the terrifying recognition that they loved each other too much to survive losing each other. "You have to let her go," Camden said from behind him. Jesse's business partner and closest friend had been trying to talk sense into him for the past hour, but his words felt like asking Jesse to stop breathing. What Camden didn't know was that in less than 3 hours, the woman Jesse loved more than life itself would board a plane to Portland. And Jesse had finally found the courage to let her go, even though it might destroy him completely. "I can't," Jesse said simply. "I know I should. I know she needs to spread her wings and find out who she is outside of us. But Camden, the thought of waking up tomorrow without her, of going days or weeks or months without seeing her face, so follow her to Portland. She doesn't want me to. She made that very clear." Jesse's voice carried the raw pain of their fight 3 nights ago, when Hesley had finally admitted what had been building between them for weeks. "I'm losing myself, Jesse," she had said, tears streaming down her face as they stood in their rooftop garden. "I love you so much that I've stopped existing as a separate person. I wake up thinking about what will make you happy. I plan my days around your schedule. I've turned into someone whose entire identity revolves around being your girlfriend, your fiancée, your future wife." "That's not true," Jesse had protested, but even as he said it, he knew she wasn't entirely wrong. "Isn't it? When was the last time I had dinner with just my friends? When did I last spend a weekend doing something just for me? I'm 32 years old, and I feel like I'm disappearing into us." Camden's voice pulled Jesse back to the present. Maybe this is what she needs, space to remember who she is outside of your relationship. "And what if she decides she likes herself better without me? Then you'll have to accept that. But Jesse, look at what you've built together. Look at how she fought for your relationship when Peyton tried to destroy it. That woman loves you completely. Sometimes people need to leave so they can choose to come back." Jesse's phone buzzed with a text from Hesley. "My flight leaves in 2 hours. I know you said you wanted to take me to the airport, but I think it's better if I go alone. I love you. That hasn't changed." "She doesn't want me at the airport," Jessie said, showing Camden the message. "Then respect that. Let her have this goodbye on her terms." A deal, but Jessie's feet were already moving toward the door. "I can't let her leave, thinking I don't understand why she needs to go. I can't let her get on that plane without telling her one more time that I'll wait for her, however long it takes." Jesse broke several traffic laws getting to Detroit Metropolitan Airport, his heart hammering as he navigated through holiday travel crowds to find Hesley's gate. He spotted her immediately. She sat alone in the boarding area, looking small, and lost in an oversized sweater, her engagement ring notably absent from her left hand. "Hesley," he called softly as he approached. She looked up and Jesse felt his chest constrict at the pain in her eyes. "Jesse, I asked you not to come. I know. I'm sorry. But I couldn't let you leave without." He sat down beside her, maintaining careful distance. "Without making sure you know that I understand." "Understand what?" "Why you need to go. Why you need space to figure out who you are when you're not half of us." Jesse's voice was steady despite the chaos in his heart. "Hesley, I've been thinking about what you said about losing yourself in our relationship. And you're right." She turned to face him fully, surprise replacing some of the sadness in her expression. "I've been so terrified of losing you that I've held on too tight. I've made decisions for both of us without asking what you wanted. I've assumed that because I was ready for forever, you were too." "Jesse, let me finish," he said gently. "When I was building my company, I had to take risks. I had to be willing to fail completely in order to succeed. But with you, I've been so scared of failure that I haven't given you room to choose me freely." Hesley felt tears welling up. "It's not that I don't want to choose you, it's that I want to choose you as a complete person, not as half of a couple who can't exist independently." "I know, and that's why I'm not going to ask you to stay. I'm not going to follow you to Portland, or call you every day, or make this harder than it already is." "You're not?" Jesse shook his head, though every word felt like tearing out pieces of his soul. "I'm going to let you go. I'm going to trust that what we have is strong enough to survive some distance and time apart. And I'm going to work on becoming the kind of man who deserves a woman strong enough to choose love freely, not because she's afraid to be alone." The gate agent announced pre-boarding for Hesley's flight. Jesse stood, knowing this was his last chance to say everything he needed to say. "Portland is lucky to have you," he said. "Those kids you'll be teaching have no idea how fortunate they are to have someone who cares as much as you do." Hesley stood too, her composure cracking. "What if I can't figure it out? What if I get to Portland and realize I don't know who I am without you?" "Then you'll figure it out there. And when you do, when you're ready, if you decide you want to build a life with me, I'll be here. What if you meet someone else?" Jesse cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Hesley Rivera, I have loved you since the moment I saw you sitting alone at that wedding, looking like dignity personified despite your broken heart. I will love you if you come back to me in 6 months or 6 years or never. You are the great love of my life, and that doesn't change just because you need to spread your wings." The gate agent called for general boarding. Hesley looked toward the gate, then back at Jesse, her internal struggle visible on her face. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too, enough to let you go." Jesse kissed her forehead softly, breathing in her scent one last time, memorizing the feel of her skin. Against his lips, "Go," he said. "Go become everything you're meant to be." Hesley grabbed her carry-on bag and walked toward the gate, turning back once to see Jesse standing exactly where she'd left him, his hands in his pockets, watching her with love and heartbreak. and something that looked like pride. As her plane taxied down the runway, Hesley pressed her face to the window, watching Detroit grow smaller below her. Somewhere in that sprawling city was the man she loved more than life itself, the man she was leaving because she loved him too much to marry him as anything less than her complete, authentic self. And in the terminal, Jessie stood at the observation window long after her plane had disappeared into the grey December sky, wondering if loving someone enough to let them go was the bravest thing he'd ever done, or the most foolish. 3 time zones away, as Hesley's plane descended toward Portland, she clutched her phone, Jessie's contact information glowing on the screen. She typed and deleted a dozen messages, each one a variation of, "I've made a mistake, I'm coming home." But she didn't send any of them, because as much as her heart was breaking, she knew Jessie was right. She needed to find out who she was, when she wasn't afraid to be alone, when she wasn't defining herself through someone else's love. Only then could she choose their future from a place of strength rather than fear. The question that would haunt them both over the coming months was simple but devastating. Would the love that had brought them together be strong enough to survive the distance that might help them grow apart? Chapter 10. He found him again. Love's greatest victories often come disguised as endings, and sometimes the heart must be broken completely before it can be healed into something strong enough to hold forever. 4 months had passed since Hesley's plane disappeared into the December sky, and Jesse Owens had learned to navigate a world without the woman who had become his reason for breathing. Portland seemed to agree with her. Her emails, which had started daily and gradually lessened to weekly, painted a picture of someone discovering parts of herself she'd never known existed. She was teaching at-risk children who reminded her why education could change lives. She was taking pottery classes, learning to paint, reading books that had nothing to do with romance or happily ever after. She was, by all accounts, blooming. Jessie was proud of her growth and dying from missing her. This particular Saturday morning in early April found him wandering through Eastern Market, the historic farmers' market that had become one of their favorite weekend destinations. He told himself he was shopping for groceries, but truthfully, he came here to feel close to her memory. Every vendor stall, every flower display, every street musician reminded him of mornings they'd spent here together, laughing and dreaming, and planning a future that now felt like something he'd imagined. He was examining some early spring vegetables, thinking about the rooftop garden they'd planted together, which he still tended religiously, when a familiar voice made him turn around. Jesse Owens. The man standing behind him was tall and lean, with kind eyes and prematurely grey hair, wearing jeans and a Detroit Tigers sweatshirt. It took Jesse a moment to place him, and when he did, his breath caught. "Damon?" Jesse said, hardly believing. It was his younger brother standing before him. "Is it really you?" Damon Owens smiled. The same crooked grin Jesse remembered from their childhood. "It's really me, though I go by David now, after Dad." Jesse felt his world shift on its axis. Damon, David, was his younger brother by 6 years, and Jesse hadn't seen him since their father's funeral 13 years ago. After their father died, Jesse had thrown himself into work, building his company and his fortune, while dealing with grief the only way he knew how. Damon had wanted to talk, to grieve together, to maintain their connection as brothers. But Jesse, overwhelmed by his new responsibilities as the successful older son, had gradually let their relationship drift until they lost touch entirely. "You look good," Jesse said, taking in his brother's healthy appearance, the peace in his eyes that seemed new. "You look happy." "I am happy," David replied. "I teach 3rd grade at Cody Elementary, have been for the past 8 years. "You're a teacher?" Jesse felt a flutter of recognition, thinking of Hesley's passion for education. Best job in the world. Kids keep you honest, keep you grounded. David paused, studying his older brother's face. What about you? Last I heard, you'd become some kind of tech mogul. Something like that. Jesse felt awkward, unsure how to bridge 13 years of silence. David, I owe you an apology. After Dad died, I should have been there for you. I should have... Jesse, stop. David held up a hand, his expression gentle but firm. We were both dealing with losing Dad the only ways we knew how. You buried yourself in work. I buried myself in helping other people. Neither way was wrong. But I lost my brother in the process. No, you didn't. I've been right here in Detroit the whole time, working with kids, thinking about you, wondering if you ever thought about me. Jesse felt tears prick his eyes. Every day. I thought about calling you every single day, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap I'd created. David stepped forward and pulled his older brother into a hug that erased 13 years of distance in an instant. There's no gap that can't be bridged between brothers who love each other. As they embraced, Jesse felt something in his chest that had been tightly clenched for months finally begin to loosen. This was what healing felt like, unexpected, overwhelming, and absolutely necessary. Come on, David said when they broke apart. Let me buy you coffee, and you can tell me what's put that heartbroken look in your eyes. Because successful tech mogul or not, you look like a man who's lost something important. They found a quiet cafe tucked between market stalls, and over coffee that grew cold as they talked, Jesse found himself telling his brother everything. About meeting Hesley at the wedding, about falling in love faster and deeper than he'd ever thought possible, about Peyton's sabotage and their reconciliation, and finally, about letting Hesley go to Portland so she could find herself. She sounds incredible, David said when Jesse finished. She is. She's everything I never knew I was looking for, and everything I know I don't deserve. That's bullshit, David said mildly, surprising Jesse with his directness. What? This idea that you don't deserve love, that you have to earn it somehow. Jesse, you're a good man. You always have been. You just forgot for a while. How can you say that? I abandoned you after Dad died. I built walls around my heart so high that it took Hesley 3 months to scale them. I let fear and grief turn me into someone who thought love was a transaction. David leaned forward. And what did you do when you realized that? What do you mean? When you met Hesley and realized what real love felt like, what did you do? Did you run from it? Did you try to control it? Did you treat her like a transaction? Jesse thought about their rooftop garden, about dancing in the rain, about letting her go to Portland even though it was killing him. No, I tried to love her the way she deserved to be loved. Exactly. Jesse, the man who let the woman he loved more than life itself get on a plane to chase her dreams because he wanted her to be happy. That's not a man who doesn't deserve love. That's a man who understands what love actually means. Jesse felt something shift in his chest, a possibility he'd been afraid to even consider. Do you think? Is it too late to tell her that? Only one way to find out. David pulled out his phone and showed Jesse a text conversation. Funny thing is, I've been talking to her. Jesse stared at the phone in shock. You've been talking to Hesley? She tracked me down about 2 months ago. Apparently, she'd been thinking about what you told her about losing touch with your brother, and she decided to see if she could find me. She found you? Found me and convinced me to meet her for coffee when she was in town for a weekend visit in February. She wanted to understand why losing me had hurt you so much, wanted to understand your family history so she could love you better. Jesse felt his world spinning. She came back to Detroit and didn't tell me. She wanted to surprise you by facilitating a reunion between us, but when we met, she was so torn up about missing you that we spent most of the time talking about how to fix her broken heart instead. David scrolled through his phone and showed Jesse a text from 3 days ago. I figured out who I am without him, and turns out I'm a woman who chooses Jesse Owens every single day. I'm coming home next week to tell him that if he'll still have me, I want to marry him. Think he'll say yes? Jesse's hands shook as he read the message. She's coming home. Her flight lands at 3 o'clock today. She was hoping you and I could meet her at the airport together, assuming I could track you down and convince you to forgive me for 13 years of silence. Jesse looked at his brother, this man who had somehow maintained faith in love and family despite their long separation, and felt the last of his defenses crumble. There's nothing to forgive. And David, thank you for being exactly the brother I needed, even when I was too stupid to realize it. So, David grinned, want to go get your girl? Detroit Metropolitan Airport at 3 o'clock on a Saturday was controlled chaos, but Jesse and David navigated through the crowds with purpose, both men nervous and excited in equal measure. Jesse had changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on the same charcoal suit he'd worn to Tamika's wedding 9 months ago, the suit he'd been wearing when he first met Hesley. They positioned themselves at the arrival gate for the Portland. A flight! Jesse's heart hammering so hard he was sure everyone in the terminal could hear it. David stood beside him, a calm, supportive presence that reminded Jesse what it felt like to have family. Flight 447 from Portland has arrived, announced the gate agent, and Jesse felt his knees go weak. Passengers began emerging from the jetway, and Jesse scanned each face desperately, looking for the woman who had changed everything about his understanding of love and life and what it meant to be truly happy. And then he saw her. Hesley emerged from the crowd like a vision, her hair longer than when she'd left, her skin glowing with confidence and health. She wore a simple green dress that brought out her eyes, and when she spotted Jesse standing there, her face transformed with the kind of joy that could power a city. She ran toward him, dropping her carry-on bag and launching herself into his arms with the force of 4 months of missing him concentrated into a single moment. Jesse caught her and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying simultaneously. "You came," she said against his neck. "I was hoping, but I wasn't sure. Of course I came. David told me you were coming home." Hesley pulled back to look at him, then turned to smile at his brother. "David, you found him!" "Actually, he found me," David said, grinning at their reunion. Apparently, the universe has good timing. Jesse set Hesley down, but didn't let go of her, his hands framing her face like he was afraid she might disappear again. "You look incredible. Portland has been good to you." "Portland taught me who I am when I'm not afraid to be alone," Hesley said, her voice steady and sure. "Turns out I'm a woman who chooses you, not because I need you to complete me, but because I love you enough to want to build something beautiful together." "Hesley." She reached into her purse and pulled out her engagement ring, the one she'd left behind 4 months ago. "Jesse Owens, I know who I am now. I'm a teacher who changes lives. I'm a woman who believes in second chances. I'm someone who loves pottery and bad romantic comedies and Sunday morning pancakes with the people I love most." Jesse felt tears streaming down his face as she continued. "But most importantly, I'm a woman who loves you completely, not because I'm afraid to be alone, but because being with you makes me the best version of myself. So I'm asking you, will you marry me?" Jesse looked at this incredible woman, at his brother who had appeared like a miracle when he needed him most, at the life spreading out before them full of possibility and hope and the kind of love that lasts forever. "Yes," he said, taking the ring and sliding it back onto her finger where it belonged. Yes, I'll marry you today, tomorrow, whenever you want. I'll marry you because you're brave enough to leave and strong enough to come back. I'll marry you because you found my brother when I was too scared to try. I'll marry you because you're the best thing that ever happened to me. And I spent 4 months learning how to be worthy of you. As Jessie kissed Hesley in the middle of the airport, with David cheering beside them and strangers stopping to watch their reunion, both understood that this was what real love looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but honest and brave, and willing to do the hard work of choosing each other every single day. 6 months later, on a perfect September evening, exactly 1 year after their first meeting, Jessie and Hesley were married in their rooftop garden, surrounded by both their families, her students, and the brother whose presence had helped heal Jessie's heart completely. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife under the same fairy lights where Jessie had first proposed, both knew they had found something rare and precious and worth every moment of pain it had taken to get there. Love, they had learned, wasn't about finding your other half. It was about choosing to build something beautiful with someone brave enough to do the same. And as the Detroit skyline sparkled around them and David played guitar while their families celebrated, Mr. and Mrs. Owens knew their love story was just beginning.